My name is Hannah McLennan, and I work at the trade body UK Music as our head of public affairs. So UK Music exists to try and support the music industry, take messages and requests or ideas to the UK government. So what we're trying to do is to get members of parliament really interested in the music industry, understanding maybe some of the problems that we're facing or some of the solutions that we've thought of, and help us either through financial support or maybe changing laws and legislation in a way that allows the music sector to thrive. And my role in public affairs is very much specifically about meeting people from government, sharing these ideas we have, hearing what they're hearing about the music industry and maybe what their thoughts and interests are. And then alongside that, writing reports about quite specialist interest areas, which then help us develop recommendations which we can take to government with some of our ideas of how we can better support very specific areas within the music industry. So many ways that we interact with music in our daily lives, and I think music can be so natural and so embedded to us that we actually take it a bit for granted sometimes. And there was this really important research that UK Music did during COVID-19, where we found that 57% of adults said music had actually helped them cope with lockdown. So there's this element of music, whether it's sort of using streaming platforms or listening to CDs or radio or even background music in shops, where we have it constantly. It's part of our routine, and it can really help us maybe regulate our own emotions or feel joy, and even help with working or studying, or commuting. And again, research from UK Music found that 71% of people think that music makes them more productive when they're working or studying. And I definitely found that even when I was at school studying for exams, I really needed music in the background to focus. And I still find that when I work today. And as well as listening, lots of people will perform music, whether that's learning an instrument, maybe working with other people in a band or an orchestra. That could be one of the first times in our lives that we learn how to work in a team, similar to doing team sports. You could be in an orchestra, or even karaoke, silly things like that, where you get the chance to sing along and meet new people. And when we talk about music, I think it's really important as well to talk about physical movement, dance. The two things can really go hand in hand, or listening to music when you do exercise to help you kind of get along. But music is also just this unsung hero in other elements of our lives, like film and TV. It sets tone. It's always there. Quite often you don't notice it, but it's in the back of adverts. And we quite often find that music is key to so many events in our lives, including weddings or festivals, concerts, even funerals. Most people do find that they have a soundtrack to their own lives. Music is more of a constant, I think, in our lives than some people can appreciate. The Power of Music report all started in April 2021, so still during kind of that COVID-19 lockdown phase. And it all began with a roundtable to discuss how we use music to support our health and well-being. And we had a really good list of attendees, including people from government and stakeholders from music, health and social care, all of whom maybe didn't get to talk to each other very often because those different areas can feel quite separate sometimes. And the meeting really had an emphasis on what we could do with music to help us recover and rehabilitate from the COVID pandemic. And I think the main theme from this meeting was quite often if people had used music in their own lives, or seen it used in someone they loved lives, they were really won over to it as this powerful tool. But we had to convince those people that maybe hadn't seen it used in a care setting or hadn't used it for their own emotions. So we decided to write this report that would hopefully convince everyone of the merits of music in these settings. So to start with, we launched a survey, and this was for the general public to fill in, as well as key organisations. And we had over 200 responses to that. And we had some really beautiful stories told to us in that survey. And I've got two that I'd quite like to read out because they're my favourites. So the first one is, my wife has been suffering from the illness Alzheimer's for about 10 years. I cared for her for 4 years and I found it increasingly difficult to keep her mind occupied. I read about Singing for the Brain, run by the Alzheimer's Society, and also Together in Sound, run by Anglia Ruskin University. Both my wife and I attended these sessions over a number of years. What I witnessed at these sessions was quite amazing, really. People could be transformed by music. They came alive again. My wife, although she was a teacher before the onset of the illness, could not read a book. I tried everything to try to make the process of following words across and down a page, but it did not work. When we started going to the singing sessions, we were giving song sheets. It was amazing. She could now follow the lyrics while singing with apparent ease. I watched her eyes light up as she sang the words on the page. And then the second one is, I've been told by adults with autism that music therapy was the one thing that really changed their lives as children. When speech wasn't forthcoming and life seemed muddled and confusing, music provided structure, a means of communicating and a way of relating to others which felt non-threatening. Not only did they gain skills in playing music, dexterity, turn-taking, sharing, listening, and anticipating what may happen next. Music can give us the confidence to do things we never thought possible, and this newly discovered boldness can be generalized through a person's life. So with these very powerful quotes from people that had used it in either quite a personal way or as a music therapist or a professional, and we also had people from care homes who spoke about how maybe they want to use music with elderly patients who potentially have dementia because it is such a powerful tool, but they don't know how, or when they've tried to introduce it, they've been told no, potentially, by their managers. So it kind of reminded us exactly why we were writing this report, because we wanted music to be more accessible to even more people and available to those that it would help the most. So after the survey, we then did a bit of a literature review, and a lot of these were kind of surveys or academic studies, again, with some really important findings. Music therapy reduces agitation and the need for medication in 67% of people with dementia, significantly reducing the spend on medication. Listening to music after surgery and even during surgery may ease pain and the need for pain medication. It can actually decrease blood pressure and steady the heart rate. Evidence suggests that people who engage with the arts are more likely to lead healthier lives, including eating healthily and staying physically active, irrespective of their socioeconomic status or social capital. And a study in Canada found that students who learn to play a musical instrument in primary school and continued playing to secondary school level not only scored significantly higher on exams, but were about one academic year ahead of their non-music peers in English, maths, and science. And again, this was regardless of socioeconomic background, gender, ethnicity, and prior learning in those subjects. So there's something really important here about how music helps our brains develop. The World Health Organization looked at 3,000 different studies and came out and said that there is significant recognition of the major role that arts play in the prevention of ill health. And that's in both active, which is performing and playing, and kind of passive, which is, more the listening side of music. And this extends from babies all the way to elderly. So we were really pleased that we had this backing of the academic world, that what we were doing does help people. So from there, we thought, well, what can the government do to help us get this to as many people as possible? So we had 4 areas of recommendations. Leadership, firstly. So we thought it'd be really good to have one person who leads on this work, which we would call the Power of Music Commissioner, and set up a group of people that they could work with to really lead this positive change. We also think it'd be great to have a public awareness campaign to really show people how music can be used at home and in their communities. We want better training and availability for health and music workers to be able to understand how they can use their work in these settings. And finally, the 4th recommendation was around funding and making sure that there was adequate funding developed to all these different areas. So we did all of that, and we released the report in 2022, and we've had some really good successes in terms of we have found some new funding, and we're working with new organizations, and we have quite regular meetings where we discuss what next. I think particularly around looking for opportunities to train healthcare workers on how music can be used. So the work is still definitely ongoing, but the report was a really important first step, and not only bringing everyone together, but having written down on paper exactly what we hope the government can do in this area in the future. I'm definitely someone that couldn't run 1 kilometre if I didn't have some sort of music to help keep me going. I have playlists on my phone for when I'm sad, for when I'm happy. And on a very personal level, I spent a bit of time in and out of hospital when I was about 10, 11 years old. And uh, funnily enough, I had one of those very small iPods that I don't think you can buy anymore, which just had music on it. And so many of my memories of being in and out of hospital is the music that I was listening to when I was there. And these moments where I was in a fair amount of either, physical pain, um, I was really helped by music. And I think that's why these studies always really resonated with me, because I read about how music can help with physical pain. And I think I went through that, and music was just a distraction. Now, those songs, I still listen to them and they take me back. And there is some real scientific evidence that music is stored in a very interesting way in our brain, where it's stored on both halves. And that is why music has such a powerful connection to memory. And that is why music can be such a good tool for people with dementia or Alzheimer's. So for me, I think I really got through quite a hard time in my life by having music there for me. And that's something that stuck with me throughout my life in both a kind of health and well-being angle, but also to this day is just something that I do because it brings me so much joy. There are a number of careers that combine music, health, and well-being, and also voluntary opportunities. In particular, music therapy and being a music therapist, which is where you will use music to support individuals facing emotional, cognitive, or physical challenges in various settings, whether that's a hospital or at home, is a really amazing career option in this area that combines all these different areas. And as those kind of quotes showed, that could be helping children that are nonverbal, and it can also help with physical movement, but be a way to support people through using music in a way that they might not be able to express emotions for a number of different reasons themselves, verbally or otherwise. So I definitely always recommend looking at music therapy, whether that's because your passion is music or healthcare. I think there are definitely people that come at it through both angles. And if you're looking at becoming a nurse or a doctor, I think having these numbers and statistics and this knowledge in your mind is really powerful for knowing that music might be something that could help your patients one day. And similarly, if you're thinking of becoming a musician one day, keep open the option of going and performing in a care home, because you may have this completely new audience that absolutely love your work. But the other part of the Power of Music report is kind of community. And something, again, we heard a lot in the survey was around people using music as the way that they get out of the house, the reason they go to a choir or they visit a community hall. So things like being a community arts facilitator or working on programs which get people listening to music or dancing to music in a very group setting. There are also lots of career options in that. And even again, on more the health side, the kind of looking at how music integrates with yoga and relaxation or gym classes. It goes back to that idea of music sometimes being taken for granted, but there are so many careers that involve physical and mental health that music could be a part of that. I think for your own well-being, music can be a really powerful tool, whether that's creating or listening to playlists to manage stress or to help you focus. It can also be a motivator. There are so many tools online now to help young people pick up an instrument. I'm someone who I picked up the keyboard again during COVID by using an app that taught me the scales again that I'd forgotten from when I learnt them in year 8. I think if you have a relative, for example, that is suffering from dementia, knowing that music is something that may really suit them in those moments you share with them. If you're aware of music they used to listen to when they were young, try putting it on and see how they react. And it could be a really nice moment. So being very aware of the fact that music is out there for everyone. It can bring us together, and there are these very strong health and well-being elements to it too. And more widely than music, there is something called social prescribing, and that's about how you can use things like gardening and sports and community activity, again, for health and well-being. So what we always say is it's, medication really is important and it does play a role in this, but things like music or other social prescribing elements can also support your health alongside medication, or just support you with that own regulation that we all need day to day.